Hi, my name is Marie. I like to make things and I like to turn around and show you how I made those things. Welcome to my channel. Hi. So anyway, you guys, I paused my Law and Order here to bring you this video because I had so much fun doing this technique. So in this video, we are going to be making a beaded chain, but like really long beaded chain with a tassel at the end, okay? In this video, you will be getting a refresher course on how to make a beaded chain. I will link to you up here my original beaded chain video so that you guys can go back to that. You will get a really in-depth tutorial on how to create a beaded chain, okay? Sound good? Alrighty, sounds good to me. In that video, you learned how to make a beaded chain with really, really small beads, okay? In this video, you will learn how to wire wrap really large beads. You will learn how to wire wrap beads that have a large hole. Why is that important? Because if you're wire wrapping a bead that has a large hole, your wire wrapping will fall right into that hole and it messes up the whole entire look of your beaded chain necklace. You'll learn how to avoid that from happening. You will also learn how to make a chained tassel. We always see tassels made with like yarn or string or whatever, but we're going to be using chain to do it. This does not look like fun. We are not going to have a great time trying to untangle this, but yeah, we're going to use this, I promise. Just hear me out. So let's start with the anatomy of a long beaded chain tassel necklace, okay? So here I have this jumbled mess of tassel chain. We're gonna move that out of the way. Okay. So right here, I have a couple of necklaces that I've made already, okay? When you're like ready to get down to the nitty gritty of making one of these necklaces, the first thing you have to think about is, do I have a nice little pretty bead that will be my focal piece of this whole entire necklace? So that's what you're gonna start with. Find that focal bead and then you work your way out from that focal bead. Does that make sense? So look at these necklaces here. So I chose for this one to be this focal bead here. It's just a really big bead that does not appear anywhere in the necklace, okay? And then I have this other little flower bead that somebody gave it to me and they didn't have holes in them, so I poked holes in them and then I was like, I don't know what to do with these. They were perfect for a focal piece that we attach our tassel to. Okay, so that's that one, okay? So let me set that aside. Then we have another focal bead, does not appear anywhere else in the necklace. Nice shiny gold bead. Again, does not appear anywhere in the necklace. This is a different type of bead, but it's not as shiny as this one. So it seems like your eyes will be drawn right to that shiny and you're like, ooh, focal piece, okay? That's what happens. You focus everyone's eyes on that part of the necklace. Focal piece, okay? So another focal piece idea you can have is to actually get a very large bead, okay? Very large bead. 30 to 31 millimeter, you know, 22. So over that 20 to 30 mark millimeter of bead is what you're gonna look for if you really want a large bead. That's not too large where it's so heavy that it just breaks your necklace, but it's a focal because it's so larger than the other beads that are on the necklace. Of course, this bead does not appear anywhere on this necklace, okay? It's nowhere on this necklace anywhere. And then it has one little bead here that attaches the little tassel to, okay? So just start with your little bead that you want to attach your tassel to and your focal piece. Once you start with the focal piece, then you can work your way out to the rest of the necklace. Okay, so this is the anatomy of this necklace that we're going to make today, okay? So I'll have a little flower bead. I will have this little, look at this bead. I don't even know what this bead is, but look at it. It is magical. It is the strangest shape I've ever seen of a bead. So I said, I have to put it somewhere. I have to put it somewhere. And so I decided this will be my focal piece, okay? And then I have my flower bead, which is the bead that I attach my tassel to, okay? All right. So I was just thinking, that looks really nice. I think I'm gonna go with that format for this video, okay? So of course I have these other beads. So I like to go and I like to get like larger beads than the average bead, but it doesn't have to be really super large. Like these right here are really big. These are a little bit smaller than that, but just take whatever beads that you have. Just make sure you pay attention to the sizes of them and how heavy they are. Make sure they have the holes. And then once you look at the holes on them, make sure that you assess whether it is a small hole or a large hole, okay? These right here, they ended up having really, really large holes. When I found that they had a large hole, I ended up taking a regular 6/0 bead on either side to basically plug the hole up so that my wire wrapping is not going to disappear into the bead itself, okay? So pay attention to the hole of the beads that you're choosing. So I chose these beads. This one ended up being a large hole, so I picked up some more 6/0, or like, I don't know what millimeters this is. I think this is 1 millimeter beads to go on either side of the bead, and you group them together and wire wrap that all together as if it's its own little bead, okay? So I did that with this, and this bead. So again, 6/0 beads, just in case when you're wire wrapping and you're like, man, this hole is really large, I can't wire wrap and have the wire wrapping fall right into the hole and mess up the whole concept. Just take some little tiny beads, plug up those holes, and then go on with your business, okay? So I wire wrapped about, this is a ballpark that it seems like it just goes natural when this area right here, I like to have that area measured at about, let's see, we got about 8 to 9 inches. So keep this part of your, middle, medium-sized beads at like 8 to 9 inches. And then after the 8 to 9 inches, then you're gonna add some length to your necklace with our beaded chain. Like I said, I linked up at the top my regular beaded chain bracelet video. And so this is the result of that video. So I took regular 6/0 beads and then I wire wrapped them to make a nice little chain, okay? So this is the chain that I made with that video, all right? So now once you have that going, this is gonna add a little bit of length. So you wanna make sure you have it on both sides, okay? So I have a spool of regular chain. Nothing crazy about it. It doesn't have to be this exact chain. You can use any type of chain. Just make sure it doesn't have any beads on it and it's not too big, okay? So here's a close-up on that. And I'm gonna try to find something equivalent and put it in the description box below so that you guys can have something fairly similar to what I've been using, okay? So now that we have the anatomy of the beaded chain necklace out of the way, what we're gonna do is we're gonna move on to how to choose your beads. And then we're gonna be using 24 gauge copper wire in order to wire wrap the beads. So we got our tools, our typical tools. We got our flush cutter. We have our mini needle nose pliers. We have our bent chain nose pliers. And then I have a wire straightener. Okay, so I'm gonna set these aside so that I can get started on what they call this, what am I gonna call this? I've heard it called a bead soup, a mishmash of beads, a gaggle of beads. I don't know what to call this, but I have this little baggie of beads. I put all these beads in the bag and I mix them all up. They look like beads that I want to use for this particular project. So I'm going to start pulling some beads out and I'm going to start planning out the way I want this necklace to look, okay? I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to have this on the bottom or on the top, but we're putting it on the bottom for right now and then thinking the tassel will come out the bottom here. So I'm just going in here and just picking out what I want to go on my, oh wow, that's pretty. And you want to keep it proportioned, okay? So you're doing one side, you do the other side at the same time. Make sure you have two of the same beads on either side, otherwise your necklace is going to look weird, okay? Keep that in mind. So I'm going to start putting some beads down here. Okay, so here I run into my first problem. Now, like I said before, you want to pay attention to the bead hole, okay? You see this bead hole is very, very thick. So if I'm using 24 gauge copper wire, that little wire wrap is going to go right into that hole. To stop it from happening, I'm going to take these two 1.5 millimeter beads and put them on either side of this bead. That is going to prevent the wire wrapping from going inside of the hole, okay? So I'm gonna make sure that I have these two beads. They're gonna be wire wrapped all together so that I wouldn't have the wire wrap just disappearing on me, okay? So pay attention to your holes. This one's a little big too, so I'm gonna throw in another 2 of these beads. That's why it really helps out to have these extra little beads, just so you don't have to worry about your wire wrapping disappearing on you, okay? And I think these holes are very, okay, so now these 2 little holes are still just as big, so I'm going to wrap them with, you know, a regular e-bead, okay? These are like about 6/0 beads, so I think I'm going to just wrap them that way. Okay, so I have the basic layout of what I want it to look like. I might throw in some other beads real quick. Hold on. So I have it all planned out, and what we do is we work one side at a time. Now we're going to leave this bead, these 2 beads here. This just lets us know this is where it ends, okay? We take our 24 gauge copper wire. Now we're going to start stringing these on to our wire. I might need my readers for these. Look at my eyes, you guys. Okay, sorry. So let's string these beads on real quick. Make sure you do it all in order. Okay, so now we have it all strung on the way we want it to look. What I'm going to do, just to keep everything out of the way and making sure that I'm not going to mess up the layout of my beads that I have on my surface here, I'm just going to move these away from the action. Now we have our beads all strung on, okay? So I'm going to pull out a little bit more of this wire. So I want to make sure I have a nice surface of wire to work with here, okay? Making sure that it's not going to get in the way. All right, so taking our needle nose pliers, just like in that video that I linked in the beginning of this video, you just start with a little loop, okay? So you got a loop. I wish I can go closer, but I can't. All right, so we got ourselves a little loop here. Then I like to use my chain nose, and I like to grab it right on the loop, and I'm just going to tie this off. And I like to do it where there's 3 loops. I want to keep it uniform. Just like I talked about in that video, you want to keep everything uniform. You want to make sure everything looks the same and it looks professional. And then I'm just going to cut that off. and then drop it on my surface here. So now I am going to pull up my bead group, okay? I want to group these together because I want to bead them all together, okay? So now that we have it pushed up, I'm going to put my needle nose pliers right up against this last little bead, and I'm going to bend it. Pivot a little bit, and then I'm going to create a nice little loop. And now we're going to close it off by wrapping 3 times. And now let's cut this off. Okay. All right. So we have our first bead. And we can just lay it on our surface here, okay? Because we are going to wrap the next bead, okay? First, we're going to create a loop. Sometimes it always helps too, if you want to, you can compare the loops, or you can take a Sharpie. If you want to keep the loops uniform, I am just going to do a quick mark on my pliers so that I know exactly where I'm going to be doing my loops. If I have it all nicely marked, and I know that I'm going to lay my wire right on that same spot each time I do a wrap. So now we are going to grab the bead that we just wire wrapped. We're going to slip it on so that it's hanging there. Grab your chain nose and put the pliers right on your loop. Like this. And then you start wire wrapping. When you put the pliers right on your loop, what you're doing is you are making sure that that loop isn't being distorted, okay? So now that you wrapped it 3 times, take your flush cutters and just cut off that extra. Next, we're gonna pull up our next group of beads, okay? So it should look like this. Then I'm going to grab my needle nose, and then I'm going to bend it and create another loop. And then we're going to close that loop off. Okay, now let's cut that extra off. And we're good. So I want to take a little bit of time here, and I want to pay attention and make sure that I don't have any wires that are sticking up. I want to make sure it's professional looking. All the wires are smashed down and looking really, really uniform, okay? Okay, so now I'm going to sit that down on my workspace here. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to create another loop. You need to pay attention to the beads that you have laying out here. This is going to be your directions of which way you're going to go, okay? So I'm not going to loop this one onto this from this direction. No, I'm going to loop it on from here because we are going in this direction, and this is what the next beads are going to be. So you're going to mess up your bead formation if you don't grab your bead and loop it on in the correct order. So now I'm going to loop on this because the next bead on my line here is this bead. They match. So that's how we can tell if we're going in the right direction and we're looping it on correctly. So I'm going to use my chain nose to grab that loop, and then we're going to start wrapping it 3 times, and then I'm going to cut the extras off. All right, So now we're going to pick up our next bead. And there you go. Now let's do our next loop. And then we're going to wrap it off 3 times. And then we're going to cut off our extras. And then this is 3 beads that we did. So if I pull this down, these should be matching up, and they are. Okay, so this is our next bead. So we want to make sure we grab right here. Let's start with our loop. So we're going to start with a loop. Then we're going to grab from right here and slip it on. Take our chain nose, and then we're going to close it off. Wrapping 3 times. Cut off the extra while you're here. Loop on our next bead. See? So that it keeps matching up to the other side, okay? So then we put it up against our bead, pull it towards us, pivot, and then we wrap it at the top of the bend, and we wrap it around. We wrap it around 3 times. So now I'm going to cut, and we're going to smash down as neatly as possible. There you go. So I like to lay it down on my workspace next to the beads that we laid out, just to make sure everything works out correctly, okay? So it's basically the same thing. You start off with a loop, but don't close it. Make sure we grab the chain at the right bead and not this bead, because we're going in this direction. Slip it on. Okay. Grab our chain nose, and then we're going to clamp down on the loop, and we're going to close it. 1, 2, and then 3. Let's cut it while we're here. Okay. Next, we're going to push up our next group of beads. See, and they should match just like this. And they're matching beautifully. Now I'm going to close off that. Okay. So next, let's cut it. Okay, and then I'm going to take my chain nose and I'm going to fix my loops, making sure they're going the right direction, and make sure that the wires are all smashed down perfectly. Then I'm going to lay it down according to the way it's laying on my workspace here. So let's do our next loop. Then we're going to grab it from here. Now we're going to grab it from here and loop it on. Now let's close it off, wrapping it 3 times. Then I'm going to cut it. Then I'm going to pull up my next bead. I'm going to create a loop, and then I'm going to close this off. And this is another technique. Once it starts getting really, really long, this long chain is going to get in the way of you wire wrapping. So once I have my loop here and I start wrapping it, I'm going in a certain direction. And when I wrap it over, then this chain starts to get in the way. Take your thumb, flick it over your hand, and continue wrapping. Okay? Because it does get in the way after a while, especially if you're using bigger beads. So I'm going to cut this. And then I'm going to take my chain nose and I'm going to fix up my wires and make sure they look nice. Okay. Then I'm going to lay it down on my workspace according to the pattern that's on my workspace. Okay. So now I'm going to create another loop. Okay. Then I'm going to grab it according to which way I'm going. Slip it on. Alrighty. Then I'm going to take my chain nose, my bent chain nose, and I'm going to put it on my loop here. And I'm going to start wrapping to close off this loop. All right. I'm going to cut it while I'm here. Then I'm going to pull up the next bead. Periodically check to see if you're going in the right direction and continue with your work. So the next couple, I'm just going to fast forward through so you can see me wrapping as I go. All right, so this is my last bead. One more wrap. Okay. So here we go. This is what it looks like so far. This is just one side of my necklace here. Okay. So next I'm going to string these on and I'm going to wire wrap them. And then when I come back, I'll have two pieces sitting on my workspace and then we're going to go from there. Okay. Okay. So now we have our two sides to our necklace. Okay. So now we're going to work on trying to extend this out a little bit towards that direction. Okay. So I'm going to pull this over. So now what I want to do is I want to locate my beaded chain. Okay. So I want to attach these to this. Okay. And so to do that, I'm going to grab two of the same one of those beads. Okay. Okay. So I want to take those two little beads and I'm going to string them onto my 24 gauge wire. Okay. And you may be asking, why are we doing this? We already have this made, okay? This is already made, but we have to attach it to the already made loops that are already there. So to do that, I'm gonna move these loops over a little bit just to get them out of the way. I'm going to take my needle nose. I'm going to start a loop, okay? I'm going to take one of these ends and I'm going to string it on. Boom. Then I'm going to close this loop off. I'm going to fix the loops, then I'm going to cut it. Okay. So now I have it attached. Now I have the bead that I just looped onto this wire. And now I'm going to do the start of another loop. I'm going to start the loop. Okay. And now this may be a little, this is different. Okay. So now I'm going to cut it even though I didn't wrap it yet. Okay, so now what we have here is a open loop. Now we're going to take our chain that we already have made and we're going to slip it on to this open loop. So we have it all attached now. So now to keep it from coming loose, we have to close off this loop. Take our chain nose, carefully get it onto that loop there. And then we're going to close it off, wrapping 3 times. Okay, so now we're going to cut this wire. Alrighty, all right. So now we have a little bit more attached to this chain. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. All right, so now we have 2 sides to our chain here, okay? Now, I am going to pull this down a little bit more. I want to be able to just take the necklace and just go like this. I wouldn't need a lobster claw, I wouldn't need anything like that. So it's just going to be a chain that's just finished off, okay? So I'm going to grab some chain, just regular chain. Now, I am not doing any measurements whatsoever. It's just a matter of feel and how long you want your chain and how short you want your chain. If you want your chain to be a little bit shorter, by all means, put a lobster claw on it. That's not hard to do. Okay, so I'm just going to pull off some chain here. What also helps is if you take a necklace that you know you love the length of and just lay it on your workspace. And I'm like, yeah. Okay, I know how much chain to put on this now because I have my necklace, my other necklace to compare it with, and it's basically the same. So I need about this much chain. So I'm going to measure off just by feel. So I think that is a good amount. So I am going to open up this link right about right here. Take another pair of pliers, grab the other side, and I'm just smidging it open a little bit. And I'm keeping the link open on this so that I can attach it to one side. And I'm going to close it. All right. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to take one loop, one link in this chain, and I'm going to open it up. Boop. And then I'm going to slip it on. Boom. And close it off. There you go. So now you have it, it's on its chain. So now we got this end, it's already done. Now we're going to move on to this end. All right, so you remember our little focal beads. So I'm just going to sit them here for right now, okay? So I'm going to use this focal bead here to tie in these two together. So I'm going to string this one on some 24 gauge wire, just like we did for the whole necklace, okay? So I'm going to string this on just like that. Then I'm going to take my round nose and I am going to do a loop, but you want to have this loop to be a little bit bigger because we want to attach this loop and this loop onto this loop. So you want to make sure you have a big enough loop for all them loops, okay? So I went down a little bit on my pliers and I created a bigger loop, a bigger little hole here. Then I'm going to take my necklaces, right? So now I'm going to take my necklace ends here and I'm going to slip them on the loop. So now you have room for two sides of these loops here. I'm going to use my bent chain nose to grab the loop that is attached to the wire here, and I'm going to close it off. Boom. And I want to have a little bit more. I did 4 wraps. It just worked out that way, and it looks good. Okay, and I'm going to cut this off. I'm going to make sure that I smash it down. Okay, so now we have it attached. They're together now. So let me pull up this focal bead, make sure that everything looks good. Everything does. And so I'm going to do a loop on this other end. With this loop, we are going to wrap it and close it off, okay? And I'm just picking up my necklace just so it won't get in the way. So we got a nice little wrap here, and then I'm going to cut this off, and then I'm going to take this necklace. I'm going to take this necklace and I'm going to sit it aside because we don't need it right now. Okay. All right, let's set that aside. So now we have our second focal bead here that's going to go underneath this bead right here, okay? I'm going to grab a little tiny piece of 30 gauge copper wire. It's very, very thin. I got about 1 foot here, maybe a little bit more than that. I'm going to have this ready to go, okay? Because we are going to take the fun part, my jumbled up mess of chain. It's a jumbled up mess of chain because of the fact that it is so thin. So I've pulled out enough here, okay? All right. So once you lay it down flat, you're gonna grab a ruler. Now, I want to make sure that I'm cutting off pieces that are about 1.5 inches. No, let's do 2.5. 2.5 seems like a magical number, okay? So I'm gonna cut off a bunch of little tiny pieces like this at 2.5 inches. So I'm gonna take my flush cutters and just put it down right on a chain and just cut it, okay? So I'm gonna do that really quick. I'm gonna give myself a ballpark of maybe 15 or 16 strands of this at 2.5 inches. Was I counting? No. All right, so after I cut all the chain out, I like to pile it like this so I can like squish it and be able to tell, is that how thick I want my tassel to be? And this is how thick I want my tassel to be. So now that I have those separated and cut, I'm gonna grab my wire that I'm gonna string these on all together. Now, I decided against using the 30 gauge wire and I went with a 26 gauge wire. What I did was I checked the links on my chain to see if this wire can fit into the link of the chain, and it could. So this is 26 gauge wire. And we are going to string up all of these chains. It may sound like a really huge deal and it sucks and all that good jazz, but I like doing jobs like this. I like doing stuff like this and I'm okay with it. So this is how I did the tassel now, you guys. All right. So I have the end of my wire, excuse my nails. And I am just going to string this wire in to the link of this chain, just like that. That's all I'm doing, okay? And I'm going to continue linking these up and stringing these up, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you guys what it looks like after I'm done. So after I strung them all on, this is what it looks like. You might want to sit here for an hour and play with it and move it around like this, but we gotta finish this necklace here. I'm going to take and put the two ends of this 26 gauge wire together. Okay, so I want to get it together so that I can start to pinch this right here. And this is just going to gather it just a little bit. I'm going to shorten the wire just a smidgle. I'm just going to shorten it just a little bit. Okay. Then I'm going to take these two wires, these two wire ends, as you can see. I'm going to string it on to my last bead. All right. So now we strung our bead on. This is what it looks like so far. So good. Okay. Now I am going to act like this is just one wire, not just two. And that was the point where my camera just cut out. So anyway, since I switched cameras and I'm going to show you again, we slipped on a bead already. Okay. Just like we did it with this whole necklace, we're going to do it just on this bead and tassel. Okay. So I'm going to just tip it back. I'm going to grab my little loopers here. And then I'm going to create a little loop. Okay. But I'm going to leave it open. Okay. Then I'm going to slip my necklace on to this loop here. Boop. Okay. And then from here, I can just take my chain nose here and just hold my loop just like this. And then I'm going to wrap around however many times that it will allow me to wrap. I'm going to wrap it, okay? There we go. So it should look like this. And then I am going to cut off the extra wire. All right, then I'm going to take my chain nose. I'm going to squish this down. The extra wire, we're going to smush that down. We're going to do it carefully because we want to make sure that it is not going to snap. All right, and here we go. Got our nice little tassel on our necklace. All right, let me try this on really quick for you guys. Look at that. You know what's also, let me see. I want to test to see how long my other necklaces are. Wow. They're pretty close. This one, the one I just made, is a little bit longer. Here's my other one. Yeah, they're basically in the same, wow. They're basically the same length. That was very unplanned. All right, so this is the necklace. This is what it looks like. And as you can see there's some of them, some of the chains are a little bit longer, but that's okay. It gives it a little bit more personality. And if it bothers you, which it is right now for me, it's bothering me, I could just simply just go like this. I'm just cutting the one that was a little long and it was bothering me. So there you go. Made it a little bit better. So there you go. I love it. All right, so I wanted to highlight a comment that just touched my heart. Just touched my heart. I love showing you guys the comments that I receive and how happy they make me. I really enjoy your comments. I really enjoy the fact that you guys are always watching my videos, always watching, waiting, and seeing what's coming next. Do I know? Heck no. I never do. I never know. No one knows. But what I do know is that every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I do a live where you guys can come in, we can chat. I might make something. I might be just sitting there talking about nothing at all. We could be talking about anything. It's just a time for me to interact with my subscribers and followers. So if you want to be a part of that, by all means, stop by Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Other than that, folks, all the supplies are located in the description box below. And I guess that's about it. So I will see you guys in the next video. Okay, bye. Yeah. I don't know what the yes for.